Here we go. So today we're going to estimate sums and differences of mixed numbers. Okay? So first of all, before we get started, can you tell me the definition of estimate? What?
Guess.
What?
Guess.
It is not guess. Yes.
Rounding.
Round. Well, you're close. You got half of it. Yes.
Rounding fractions and adding up the
Almost. What?
round and solve.
Round and solve. We're estimating, so we're going to round and then we are going to solve. Okay? We are going to be adding and subtracting fractions. So, we're going to start with rounding some decimals and adding some decimals for a warm-up. Okay? So, Ali bought lunch at a restaurant. She spent $5.75 for a sandwich, $1.99 for a cup of soup, and $1.29 for milk. Which is a more reasonable estimate for the amount of money Ali spent on lunch? $9 or $10? Okay? So, it says the word estimate, which means we need to round and then solve. So on your whiteboards, round and then solve. Flip your whiteboards over when you're done.
So you're never gonna go back to your hockey?
No. Okay. So we have to round and then solve. So we're going to look at all these numbers and we're going to round them. So our first number we're going to look at is $5.75. That's going to round to what?
$6.
$6. Then $1.99, which rounds to $2. Then $1.29, which will round to
$1.
$1. We're going to add that together. 6 plus 2 is 8, plus 1 is
9.
So our answer is $9. Okay. That's as difficult as your homework gets. Without the decimals. So, real quick, before we move on, we need to discuss why is rounding or estimating the sums and differences, why is it helpful? It does two things. Okay, first of all, it makes it easier to add and subtract. Right, because you can round the numbers to numbers that are easy to work with, and you can add and subtract them. That's number one. What's the second reason that this would be helpful?
To get about how much it should be.
About how much it should be? Why would that be important, though?
So you know how much you might need.
So you can know how much you might need, all right, or you can know if the answer that you get to a problem makes sense. Because, like the last one, we rounded it, and it was $9, right? So if I had, like, I don't know, $20 for my answer, my answer's probably wrong. Okay? All right? So we can check answers, we can make sure that our answers make sense, and it makes problems easier to do. So, like, grocery shopping is a perfect example. If you go grocery shopping with your mom, if you just keep rounding everything you put into the basket from the nearest dollar, you can kind of have a running tally in your head. As long as you're not doing 300 different. You bring that protein back?
Yeah.
Where is it?
I came back from chapter school, and when you were in the meeting, they gave it to this lady who's in this technician, so she would give it to you. Is Allison? Allison. Is that you?
Is it the white plastic bag that's on my table? You know why that white plastic bag is still on my table? Because I didn't know whose stuff that was, so it was just put on my table. So you were about this close to me telling me that you had to pay for all your stuff. Okay, so now this problem right here is identical to what we're going to do today. It's a fraction, a mixed number that we're going to round, and then we're going to solve, okay? And this is the way we're going to do this. When you're doing your work today, I think that the only way that you're going to get a problem wrong is if you don't pay attention whether it's adding or subtracting, or if you round the fraction the wrong direction. So in order for me to be able to help you if you get an answer incorrect, I need to know how you round it. So what we're going to do is we're going to break up our mixed numbers into addition problems. So 5 plus 1/7 equals, and 11 plus 5/8 equals. Then we're going to round the fractions and add. So is 1 closer to 7 or 0?
0.
So this rounds to 0. Now is 5 closer to 8 or 0?
8.
So since it's closer to 8, it rounds to
Or 1.
1.
Oh, that's easy.
So now 5/7 is about 5, and 5/8 is about 11 and 5/8, sorry, is about 12. So now we have 5 plus 12 equals 17. So this is about 17. Yes, sir.
So you're not rounding to the half?
No. You're rounding to the nearest whole number. Okay? That's it. That's as hard as it gets. Now, let's do a word problem. Jack and Alex are standing 10 2/3 yards apart. Jack moves 1.5 yards closer to Alex. Estimate how far apart Jack and Alex are standing now. Show your work. Okay, on your whiteboards, get started. All right. So our problem's a subtraction problem, correct? So we have 10 2/3. Subtract 1.5. Now, we're going to estimate, which means we have to round. So we have 10. So that's what we have. Okay? We're going to round our 2/3. Is 2 closer to 3 or 0?
3.
So it's going to become
1.
Now, we talked about halves. 1 is right between the 0 and 2. So which direction do we round? We round it up because we treat anything that's like a half like a 5. Right? So we round it up. So it's 1 plus 1. 10 plus 1 is 11. Subtract 2 equals
9.
That's it.
What's making that noise? The ice cream man. I wanted to know.
Okay. You need one? Does anybody else need one? Huh?
He said I'll have
Okay, Jackson, it's in the back in the black tray. Go ahead and get one. Anybody else would like one? No? Fantastic. All right. So here's the examples from your book. What? It's 663. 663. You should have your books open to page 663. And then when you get back, you can get one of those things too. Okay. So, it says Lucita and Alexis went scuba diving for 7 1/3 hours. The next day they went scuba diving for 4 2/3 hours. About how many hours did they spend scuba diving altogether? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our problem, which they did for us right here. Okay? 7 1/3 plus 4 2/3. but we're estimating, which means we need to round each mixed number to the nearest whole number. We are not doing this. That's like the 6th way that our book has shown us to round. Don't pay attention. Cross it out right now. Okay? What we are going to do, just like we did on the page before, we're going to set up an addition problem. The whole number plus the fraction. We're going to round the fraction to the nearest whole number, which is either one of two things. The only two numbers we can round a fraction to if we're going whole numbers are what? Anybody tell me? What was that, Reef? Lucas. Correct. I'm sorry. Lucas told me I can only round it to 1 or 0. So this is going to be, 1/3 is going to become a 1 or a 0. How do I determine that? I take the 1 and I figure out, is it closer to 0 or is it closer to the denominator, which is 3? Is 1 closer to 0 or 3?
0.
So therefore 1/3 rounds to 0. So 7 plus 0 equals 7. So my first one down here, I round it to 7. Okay? My next one, 4 2/3. So I'm going 4 plus 2/3. Is 2 closer to 3 or 0?
3.
So if it's closer to the 3, it becomes a
1.
number 1. So 4 plus 1.
5.
Okay? 7 plus 5 is about 12. So 7 1/3 plus 4 2/3 is about 12. I can actually tell you that if you did this, it would be exactly 12. Because 1/3 plus 2/3 is 3/3. 7 plus 4 is 11. 3/3 is 12. So they spent about 12 hours. They should have used a better problem for that, but oh well. So far, so good? That's as difficult as tonight's going to get.
This will be a short.
Well, it shouldn't be anything tonight. You should be able to have it done before you leave the room. Go home tonight, watch the video, and double check your answers.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Sound like a plan? Okay. Gibby. I still have another example to show Gibby. Okay. Same thing. Before I even get started, I'm crossing this out. Don't you look at this. Cross it out on your paper. We are not rounding that way. Okay. One sea anemone is 3 1/4 feet across, while the second sea anemone is 5 3/4 feet across. About how much longer is the across is the second sea anemone? So look at it says about, so we're rounding. See here it says estimate. They set up our problem for us already. So how are we rounding? We're going 5 plus 3/4. We're also going 3 plus 1/4. Okay? So, is my 3 closer to 0 or 4?
4.
So it rounds to
4. 9. 1.
If it's closer to the denominator, it's a 1. If it's closer to 0, it's 0. A fraction can only be one of two numbers when you round it, and that is 1 or 0. You're only going to round a fraction to 1 or 0. So 5 plus 1 is 6. Is 1 closer to 4 or closer to 0? So 1/4 rounds to 0. I want to see this on your homework, because if you make a mistake, that is where you're going to make it. What?
That one's exactly 3 too.
No, it's not. We're subtracting. So 6 minus 3 is 3. So it's about 3. Okay. The second centimeter is about 3 feet longer. Now, my buddy over here said, Mr. Bevel, that's 3 too. Well, it's not, because 5 minus 3 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. So the exact answer, if we, it's 2.5. Okay. Who's talking back there? All of you? Okay, why don't all of you go get yourselves a Croatia? Alright, so here's our guided practice for your homework tonight, for your classwork. You should have plenty of time to get this done here in class. You're going to have about 15 minutes, so it shouldn't take that long. So our first one. This is what I want to see. Okay? If I don't see this, your homework is not complete. Why? Because this is the hardest part of your homework, which means I want to see whether or not you understood what you were doing when you're rounding, okay? So here, my 1, it's not very close to 8, but it is very close to 0, so it's 2 plus 0. When you do this, I know that you understand how to round your fractions, okay? Over here, my 5, it's 5 away from 0, it's 3 away from 8, it's closer to 8, so it's a 1. Okay? I'm adding, so 2 plus 4. So my answer is 6. Okay? I go to my next one. Excuse me. See what I just did? So 5 plus 2 ninths. And 3 plus 2 thirds. Okay? 2 is closer to 0 than 9, so that's 5 plus 0. 2 is closer to 3 than 0, so that's 1. So that's 3 plus 1. Make sure you check your sign. It's subtraction, so 5 subtract 4 is 1. On a subtraction problem, you're still adding when you're rounding. Okay? But then you have to make sure you subtract when you're done. Now, next one. 3 plus 3 fifths. And 1 plus 1 fifth. My 3 is closer to 5 than 0, so that's 1. So 3 plus 1 equals 4. My 1 is closer to 0 than 5. That's a 5 there, okay? Which means that's 0, so that's 1 plus 0. I'm adding, so I'm adding 4 plus 1, which equals 5. I want to see how you rounded your fractions. If you do not show me how you rounded your fractions, you are not going to get credit for doing your work. Okay? Rounding the fractions is going to be the hardest part of what you're doing. I want to see you do it. Alright, at this time you have the rest of the class to work on your independent work. You're doing 4 through, I believe it's 20. 4 through 20 on 665 and 666. Okay? You should be able to finish this in class. And then check your answers when you do your stuff. Go ahead. Gibby had already asked. But then again, Gibby got a PRA check, huh? Hurry up, Gibby. Yes. when he gets back, Williamson.
Yes, okay. Can we do a business, Thursday and Friday? I can do that. Let's see what both days I have HBCU.
You have what?
HBCU? What is that?
Thursday we took a test, so you didn't have homework. And Friday we didn't have math. Angel, maybe you should put your marker away, get your pencil, and do your work.